Hey guys, I'm Eckhart from the ADRENO store here in Melbourne. I'm just going to run you through some of the basic gear that I'm using here diving around Melbourne. One of the first things I just want to show is just a little catch bag like this. Now this is a great way to keep your gear organized on the boat or at home or on your way to the beach. So in here, generally my mask, my snorkel, my gloves, my socks. So when I pack this into my dive bag, I know that everything's going to be in there. I'm not going to be scratching around looking for a lost glove. It's also a great way, since most of our diving in Victoria is shore dive, when you head down to the beach and you've got your wetsuit on, I pop this around my waist and it keeps my mask and my snorkel, my gloves, everything else, it keeps it nice and safe. So gradually, when I sit down on the rocks, gradually as I need those items, whether it's gloves or mask, I can take that one item out and put it on. I have lost a mask and snorkel sitting right at the beach, so it's ideally something that you want to do where, you know, if there's a lot of swell and waves and action, surface action, it's nice to just keep everything nice and safe and out of the way. So I'm just going to run you through some of the basics that I use. For our diving, I really like the Boucher semi-dry gloves, 4.5 mil, really warm. Our water gets super cold. So it's nice to have really warm hands. They're also great actually for crays, although sometimes you might want to have a slightly thinner glove just for a bit more dexterity for your crays. While we're on crays actually, my go-to torch at the moment, it's a rechargeable Pro Blue. It's 1200 lumens, so it's bright enough to pierce into those dark cracks and caves that you'd be looking for your crays. I do use a wrist lanyard on mine. So when I put it on, if I'm going to let go of it, it's going to always be on my wrist. Another good thing that I've done to my personal torches, I've actually taken, you can go to Bunnings and get a self-adhesive silicone tape, and that gives you just a little bit more grip on it. So I've done it in white, so that if my torch comes off my wrist lanyard and I do drop it, it's just one other thing for me to see. I've got a little yellow wrist lanyard, and then there'll be a white silicone tape actually on my on the torch. While we're speaking about these little odds and ends, in our winter months, again, thick socks. So most guys down here in Victoria, 5 mil socks, 4 mil socks. You can, what I've done too is I use a 3 mil sock. Now, depending on how thick of a sock you've sized your fins on originally, or your foot pockets, they might not fit in a thinner sock or they might not fit in a thicker sock. So currently the foot pockets I'm using, a 5 mil sock is really difficult to squeeze in there. It's quite painful actually. So I use a 3 mil sock, and I use these little probe insulator socks. They're only 0.5 mil thick, so they're not that thick, but they add a lot in warmth. They're very flexible. So what I have found is if you wear an extra large in a sock, you'd probably want to get a large in these guys, just because they're so stretchy. An extra large will be a little bit too big. When it comes to float lines, I basically run two different float line lengths. So in our bay, the diving is very shallow. We have a lot of boats, jet skis, so we want to try and keep our float as close to us as possible. So when the person driving the boat, if they're looking for a diver, they don't have to look really a long way away from the float. They can actually see that the diver will be pretty close. So I use a 10-meter float line, the PVC one from ADRENO. On the back beaches, I use a slightly longer one because we have stronger currents, and the diving on the back beaches can be quite a lot deeper. So back beaches, shallower, you're looking at like 6 meters, but generally it drops off. You'll find drop-offs at 12 to 14 meters. So you'd want a slightly longer float line. So I use a 20 meter float line on the back beaches. There isn't that much boat traffic, but there is some boat traffic out there. So just keep that in mind. When it comes to floats and boat traffic, I use quite a visible float with a little diver flag on it. Now the current float I'm using at the moment is actually a float from New Zealand called Harrison. I've had a few encounters with sharks. I'll tell you a quick little story actually. So when I moved here from South Africa, in South Africa we used to dive in really thick kelp beds. And I used to use a cray bag just like this and put it around my waist, and whatever I would shoot, I'd actually keep my fish in my little cray bag around my waist. And I thought it's probably the same here. So when I moved here, I did the exact same thing. Didn't have a float line. I just used my gun with my reel gun and went out diving. And I had a 7-gill shark that I'd seen during the dive. He didn't come too close, so I wasn't really that concerned about him. And then I was swimming in a pretty shallow water, probably about 2 meters of water. He swam up behind me and basically bit into this cray bag that was around my waist. I had a near heart attack, but that was also the last time that I carried any kind of dead animals around my waist, especially in the water. So currently the float I use, it's very similar to the Harrison float, where you actually put your fish inside it, so that there's no scent in the water. You can use these catch bags too. What's nice about them is shark's teeth or rays, it's not going to go through this. It's going to protect your catch. You can actually go home with it. So that's a really good thing. With regards to wetsuits, I use a 5mm open cell wetsuit. Currently I'm using the new Rob Allen suit. Super soft. I really like the camo for our waters. We've got a lot of like weedy, sandy patches, so this kind of more browny green camo really works well for us. Yeah, it's a really soft camo. I like the fact that it's open cell. What I do in our winter months is I actually buy a 1 liter flask and I fill that with piping hot water. So I'm actually lubing the suit up with warm water, so the suit's nice and warm when I get into it in the winter months. Another good tip actually for your winter months is the thermos drinking flasks, normally about 3 liters. They're normally blue with like a white lid. Grab one of them. They're not that expensive. Fill them with nice hot water, and then after your dive you can actually have a nice little hot shower after your dive. In terms of spear guns, the most used guns I've got at the moment in our summer months, if I dive the back beaches, I'm currently using the Rob Allen roller. I just love the way it's been designed. It's got really nice bearings, it's silky smooth, the trigger make is really great. I've tried a lot of different guns and I keep trying new things, and I kind of keep coming back to Rob Allen. I guess I'm South African, so I should be semi-loyal to them, but they make a great product and I really enjoy using it. So for diving for kingfish and on the back beaches, I'm using the 1.1 meter roller. Diving in the bay, I use a 80 or a 90 centimeter spear gun. I actually prefer your aluminium barrels for diving in Victoria, because we're often marking either a hole in the reef for the crays, or we're marking an area that's got scallops. So it's nice to have a gun that's a little bit solid and heavy, and it's not going to float around in the current. You can also use an anchor or a floating anchor from Picasso or the ADRENO brand, just an anchor an area, so that you can earmark a spot just to do a couple more repetitive dives in that area. When you use your thicker suits, like your 7mm suits, or even I've got a 7mm top that I wear in winter, it's nice to get just a weight vest, just to take some of the weight off your waist, so that you don't have a lot of back strain, or you're not carrying all your weight on your waist. In terms of fins, what I'm using the dive eyes. I'm using a soft fiberglass. I really like the really big angle on them. Now that big angle for me it just makes a massive difference when it comes to your surface swimming. So if you can have a look, if I put that pressure on, it really helps that forward projection, and it helps that fin to penetrate into the water. So your surface swimming with the fin that's got a good angle makes such a big difference. And especially like here in Victoria, we're doing a lot of shore dives, we're swimming great distances, so it's great to have a fin that can really penetrate the water nicely and that's got great performance in terms of its action. I've also had a knee operation, so for me I really like a soft blade. So it's definitely something worth considering upgrading. And that's just a few of the products that I'm currently using at this moment.